Thank you very much, all of you, for being here on the second webinar on our series of webinars done by the ECES jointly with the CID. And the series of webinars are meant to brainstorm specific topics of high interest for not only the COVID-27 as a conference, but also the COP27 as a conference. I'm sorry, but also COVID is affecting all of us. This is terrible. Not only for the COP27, but actually for beyond the COP27. And this is actually the more important thing. What's happening with the climate and what's happening with the environment and the price that human beings are paying, especially the vulnerable groups. So the idea behind the webinars is to pick specific topics and focus on them in brainstorming with a lot of attention on bringing out solutions to problems to hopefully support the discussions that are to take place on the COP. And also support the governments with ideas on how to improve things. Our first webinar was on the 3rd of August, and it was talking about financing, about climate finance. And the second one is today talking about the small farmers' concerns, which actually goes back and forth around the farmers. When we talk farmers, we're talking agriculture, we're talking vulnerable groups. There is a big impact of climate change on agriculture in Africa. That's obvious. These are the questions that are in the agenda, and around these, our discussion will focus: the impact of the climate change on agriculture in Africa, the impact on small farmers in particular, and then most important is how to increase the resilience of those farmers, building primarily on things that are already tested and already thought of and hopefully implemented on the ground. In African countries. So it's again bringing out the voice of Africa to the surface and in the solutions. Before we start, I want to say two things. First of all, three things. First of all, I want to welcome our lovely, excellent speakers. And I will start with Mr. Praveen Agrawal. He's the representative and country director of the World Food Programme in Egypt. Mr. Agrawal has spent most of his professional career in development and humanitarian sectors. He is a strong advocate of public-private partnership, which he firmly believes are essential to fulfill the SDGs, to change the lives and livelihood of millions of marginalized people. Before he was appointed in Egypt, for the World Food Programme in August 2021, he served as representative and country director in other countries, the last of which was in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And he holds a master's degree in business administration from Boston University. And his professional interest revolves around innovation, science and technology, capacity building of national governments, South-South cooperation, developing public-private alliances, and lots of other things. And Mr. Praveen is an Indian national. It's great to have you.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
We have with us also Dr. Frejus Thoto. He's the executive director of ACED. He is the executive director of ACED, a think and do tank that operates in West Africa. ACED combines research, policy, and local action to reduce poverty and hunger in the most vulnerable communities. Frejus is also working for the World Bank on establishing and facilitating knowledge management platforms in the Gulf of Guinea and Sahel countries. His work is about supporting countries, institutions in generating and sharing knowledge about relevant development issues, and he holds a PhD in agricultural economics. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
And since Mr. Praveen said that he's an Indian national, let me ask you, where are you from originally?
I'm from Benin.
You're from Benin. Okay, all right.
Benin, yeah.
It's great to have you. Now, Mr. Mohamed Osman, he's a consultant, ISTIDAMA and IGAD and DRDIP. Mr. Mohamed, areas of expertise include policy analysis, evaluations, disaster risk management, public-private partnerships, environmental assessment, climate change, and operation management. He's currently an independent consultant to the above institutions that I mentioned, and previously provided consultancy services to several prestigious UN entities and projects. He's a member of several professional bodies, such as the Sudanese Agriculturalist Association, Sudan Studies Association, Africa Import-Export Trading Group, Association for International Agriculture, Rural Development Group, and Arab Land Initiative Forum. And he holds a master's degree in humanitarian assistance from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, Medford, Boston, United States, and a master's degree in agricultural economics from the University of Khartoum. And he's a Sudanese national. It's great to have you, Mr. Mohamed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Last but not least, and he did not join us yet, but I'm sure he will do if he didn't already in the next few minutes. Mr. Kola Masha is the managing director of Baban Gona. Masha is a managing director of Baban Gona, and it's a farm enterprise. Prior to co-founding Baban Gona, Kola was the managing director and CEO of the subsidiary in the Notor Group, one of Nigeria's leading agriculture conglomerates. Kola holds an MBA from Harvard and an MS in mechanical engineering from MIT. Kola received numerous awards, including being the first leader in history of a for-profit social enterprise to win the prestigious Scholl Award for Social Entrepreneurship. It's great to have him with us, and I hope if he's not in yet, that he's going to be in very soon. Okay, it's a pleasure to have all four of you, and I would like to thank the African Capacity Building Foundation, ACBF, headed by Mr. Mamadou Bitier and his team, for actually putting us in contact with Dr. Thoto and Mr. Masha in specific. They're helping with nominating excellent speakers, relevant speakers. All of you are excellent speakers and very much at the heart of the topic, with also a very large base and diversity of knowledge that supports the idea of having improved policies by governments and innovative solutions for the problems that we're facing. Okay. One more thing that I want to announce is that the fact that Her Excellency, the Minister of Environment, Egyptian Minister of Environment, Dr. Yasmin Fouad, she will be joining us sometime during the webinar. She makes it a habit to actually be in with us. She did last time, making a very short intervention, because she's adopting very much this entire initiative and making sure that what we say and what we suggest will be heard in COP27. So I'm just saying this, and when she comes in, it's going to be a small interruption to whatever that we're talking about, and she will be in with us. Okay. Having said this, let us start, and let me start with first a general quick question, okay, to all three of you before we start focusing on the innovative solutions and on the detailed impact. Okay, do you feel that farmers are our focus for Africa? Do you feel that they are really aware of the problem? Do you feel that they are aware that what they see on the ground as problems related to their land and so on are related to climate, or they see it, in a different way? Is there awareness on the ground for the climate issue and its impact, and that someone is trying to work on it, or it is not there? This is, just a very quick, general one before I go back to talk about more specific issues. From our three speakers, who would like to start answering this quick one, this quick unplanned question? Who would like to start? Okay, Mr. Hussein, go ahead.
I think it's very clear for the farmers, or particularly in the rural setting, and it is reflected in the migration trends. There is a lot of rural to urban migration, and that is due to the stress they are facing in their local environments. And this is recorded as migration figure in East Africa between the countries. Like in Uganda, you have like 1.5 million who is coming inside Uganda. In Kenya, about 600,000, Somalia, etc. All of them are facing people movement, either cross-border or inside. If they are cross-border, it is refugees, and if it is inside, it is internally displaced people. But for farmers, because I would like just to alert, for farmer, it is not only cropping, it is livestock, cropping, forest, rangeland. All of this is growing ground, which is affected by climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Praveen.
Thank you very much, and very good morning to all of you. It's a great pleasure to be here. I don't have any major things to, in addition to what Mohamed just said, but I think this issue of is it visible? Do they realize? I think the farmers and the small farmers particularly are very attuned to their environment and their surroundings. Every small change that happens is immediately felt. We've seen this time and time again. They are seeing not only the land size and land use being affected, but the effect of climate on their crops, the amount that they're getting from it. They're seeing it in the rise in the cost of their inputs. They are seeing it across the board. They're seeing it in the types of pesticides they're having to use because the natural consequences are not. And let me just tell you that in most societies, at times, even in DPRK where I was, which is a very different society, farmers were usually thought to be a little bit better off than the poor population because they had access to food. And the point mentioned by Mohamed is extremely important. The real effect is the migration of the people when there's no food around and the movement of people to the peri-urban or urban settings. And this makes heavier demands on the rest of the population. And of course, loss of income, the loss of assets. These are all immediate consequences of climate on their surroundings. Let me just stop there for the others.
Okay. Dr. Thoto, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Mohamed and Praveen, for those initial remarks. I think it's very clear for me that farmers, and when we say farmers, I want us to be a bit broader and mention farmers, fishermen, fisherwomen, those people involved in livestock. I think they know, I would even say that they knew about climate change before people like us as scientists.
Until he comes back, let me just add something small here. Are they aware that this is something that's originating from the climate, or do they see it as like failure by their governments? The source of the problem. They are observing changes and they feel that they're being failed by their governments, or they actually see this as something that's coming that sort of cannot be controlled. Okay, go ahead, Praveen, go ahead.
Thank you. I think governments can't be blamed for everything. I think here, while everybody likes to blame governments, I think even our dear farmers are very, very closely attuned to their surroundings. They know the world's changing. They can see it every day. Now, what they can blame the government on is, are we able to address, and can they blame anybody, is how fast we are able to adapt and how fast are we able to respond, how fast are we able to bring solutions to those issues. So it's not a one size fits all. Of course, there's always a target. That can be the government and others, but climate is very much on top of their minds. At least from what I've seen
back to you,
in the farmer communities that we work in.
Okay, Dr. Thoto, back to you. I mean, hopefully your connection is better now.
Sorry. Yeah, I lost you for a few seconds. I hope you can hear me and see me very well.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. No, so I was just saying that for me, having worked with those farming communities for the last 10 or 12 years, I think they are very clear on the effects of those of the climate change. And I was mentioning that they may not call it climate change, but I know that the natural parameters, the temperature, and the other aspect that they use to follow, to decide on the production, all of that is changing. So in a way, they're already experiencing the impact. And then I think the next step is for the different communities to support the indigenous adaptation, but also to receive support from external parties, including the government and all those organizations trying to put forward some solutions. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now another quick round. The impact on agriculture in Africa from the climate change. If we are to put in bullet points, the key effect for those who are not aware of the details of that. Let me start with Mr. Hussein. Go ahead. Again, that's another quick question. Before we go to the solutions, because I like to focus on the solutions and the answers, okay? But to get in, we need to lay the foundation. Mr. Mohamed, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
You need to unmute you, but before you start for a second, I want to welcome Dr. Adel Biltagi, our ex-Minister of Agriculture. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. It's a real honor and a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you. Well, and I'm sure you know I'm sure you know the speakers. I'm sure you met everybody. Okay, yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Mr. Hussein, go ahead, please.
Yeah, welcome to everybody and the newcomer. Actually, the first thing is the shortening of the growing season, particularly for rain-fed farming. Usually, in those areas, the crop may need from 80 days to 120 days, depending on the soil type. And because of the change in the climate and particularly drought or floods, then the growing season is affected. So sometimes the plant can grow, but cannot reach the maturity to have crops. Other places, there is change in the flora of the grasses growing for feeding livestock and grazing because of the fluctuation in the temperature and the moisture precipitation. The third, I think, is according to the rainfall, the weed, the grasses inside the field sometimes going to be dense and can attack the crop and cannot let the crop grow, or other time there is flash floods like what is happening now in East Africa, particularly Somalia, Kenya, and southern part of Ethiopia. There is drought, while in Uganda and in Sudan, there is floods. And usually it is abnormal. It is due to climate change. I stop here.
Okay. So Praveen?
Yeah, well, just Dr. Hussein has been very comprehensive. I think the impact of climate change on agriculture, very quickly, agriculture is going to pay the most significant cost in terms of losses and damages. We really need to concentrate on adaptation. We really, the burden is shifting really from the poor to making them even poorer. So we're taking food from people that don't have to the starving. So I mean, this is the impact on agriculture, that already with everything that Dr. Hussein has said, you're having lower production. In addition to that lower production, you're having losses. and damages as a result of inadequate and ineffective storage, and also the supply chains are being affected as a result. Let me stop there.
Okay. No, thank you. I mean, these are all extremely important points, the impact. Dr. Thoto, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I think Mohamed and Praveen has mentioned the major impacts that we know, which definitely would affect the agricultural sector, especially looked from its crop production angle. But the same similar effects are also present in the other sectors of agriculture. Livestock, for example, pastoralists are also experiencing the seriousness of climate risk and the potential consequences of the climate change. So at the same, similarly to the crop production, recurrent drought period, for example, have been reported to create massive cattle death, especially in the Sahel region. We also have some feed shortages, which may also be a consequence of the lack of, the reduction of the rainy season, which leads also to water scarcity that could also affect livestock breeders. So I think the agricultural sector is more than the crop production. So it's also having a lot of effect on livestock, on fishermen, on fisher women. Most of the time we don't have, we don't look at climate change on that angle. We mostly look at it from grain production or from crop production, but the other small communities also are experiencing, severe consequences of climate change.
Okay. No, thank you very much for all these points, and because the direct effect on the cropping, okay, and it's extremely important to say that absolutely that agriculture is not just cropping; it's cropping and livestock and everything else. And what you said, Praveen, is actually very scary. It's taken from the people who don't have it to the ones who are starving. What are the others? What are all the others that have all the food in the world? They are somewhere else, and this is why we are talking now. But let me go back to Dr. Thoto. The fact that agriculture is not only cropping, it's also livestock, okay? Then did the climate change lead to conflicts between these groups working on those different issues? And if so, how is it handled? You tell me, because I know that this is one of the areas that you know very well. Dr. Thoto, unmute, please. Unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, I'm unmuted now.
Okay,
conflict, as we all know, in every part of the world, is just the other side of people who are disputing the same resources. You will never see a conflict somewhere where you don't have behind a misunderstanding or disagreement over a resource. And that's where the linkage between climate change and conflict comes from. Because when we say that climate change is affecting, for example, the rainy season, is creating, droughts, we don't have access to water anymore. So those resources will start becoming less and less in those communities. So more people will be looking for the same resources, and then we are in a situation where there could be a problem over those resources. So conflict, I know that you are very aware of what is happening now in the Sahel region. Is becoming a highly political concern in the Sahel region. But it's not only now in the Sahel region, it's already coming into the northern parts of the Gulf of Guinea, countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Benin, who are having the first attack or conflict between farmers and pastoralists. It is not that we are saying that those conflicts are only created by climate change, but climate change is aggravating those conflicts. It affects the distribution, the abundance, and the availability of the natural resources. So more people are looking for the same area to provide water to the cattle or to provide, to get food for them. So it is actually exacerbating the tensions between the farmers and the pastoralist communities. And it goes back to what Mohamed was mentioning about migration, because when people are not able to find the resources in their own areas, the first adaptation reflex that they have is to leave that area to go in another area to get the same resources. And when they go, along their way, there are conflicts because they could destroy some crops, or even when they go to a place, it could create some conflict with the local communities. So transhumance as a mode of livestock rearing has become, over the years, a source of recurrent and violent conflict. There is a recent report by a think tank in the Netherlands, which reports that in the Sahel and Gulf of Guinea, we have at least 5 to 7 conflicts every month, which which are between farmers and pastoralists. So this issue is becoming more and more present in our communities. It's not that it's only created by climate change, but the climate change effects are exacerbating the conflict. Yeah, I will stop there.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Thoto. So, we're talking about really the impact of the climate change is not only on agriculture and the quality of agriculture or the quality of cropping or the duration of the season or the quality of the crop itself, but it's actually way more than that on the conflicts and leading to migration and so on. I want to welcome Mr. Kola Masha for joining us. Okay, you arrived a bit late, but it's a pleasure. I already introduced you, I read your CV and everything. Okay, so I'm glad you're here. Okay, and we'll get to you in a minute, but I'm giving a very special privilege to Dr. Adel Bertegi, given his incredible expertise in agriculture, and he raised his hand to comment on this issue. So hopefully in a couple of minutes, Dr. Adel, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Abla, to arrange this very important meeting and even focusing on small farmer, because climate change, when it will impact the agriculture sector, it will impact the most vulnerable elements of this farming community, meaning children and women. Exactly. And when we look at developing countries, we are talking about between 50 to 70% of the population work in agricultural sector or agriculture-related activity, including agro-industry. But the point here is that what we are facing worldwide, and this will impact exactly the agriculture and the people who are involved in agriculture, is that we are going to have a reduction after 2050. We will have a reduction starting from 30% up to 50% in all agriculture produced in the world, with an increase of population. Now we are 7.93 billion people living on this planet, but we are heading for 10 billion. And therefore, the gap here requires 70% more production, while you will have an increase of between 30 and 50%. It's a catastrophe. Not only this, but disruption of the market, the food chain. This disruption economically will affect the whole process. And as well, it will affect not only crops, any organism which is thermolarable is going to be affected, including plants, animal, and fisheries, inland fisheries, as well in the sea fisheries. And therefore, we have to be very careful, because the amount of, which is our colleague Thoto was talking about, this between pastoralists and farmers, but not only this, but socio-political upheavals is coming even for the have. The conflict between and the have and have not is very clear, because this exodus, what Dr. Abla talked about, outmigration assessment is between 200 million to 1 billion by the end of 2050. There is an estimate of outmigration of all farming, of the majority of farming community, starting from pastoralists to more than that. And this will affect the socio-politically, not only the developing countries, but as well as the countries which has greener meadow, because they will go there. I think I will stop here, because this is an enormous problem which we'll have in agriculture. We need to make the tools, put the tools we have in science and technology, in policy, in us as human beings. Rather than saying me, we'll say we. But I will stop here. Thank you.
We never say we, though. I mean, we say we in rhetorics, but in reality, we never say we, Dr. Adel, you know. Now, Dr. Adel took us to the peak of the disaster now, okay? That we are going to have 70% less, and we are increasing in number, and the socio-political problems. We reached the peak of the problem, and we're going to cry. But instead of crying, we are going to look at solutions that are actually coming from Africa.